Hey, welcome back to the show. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Arif Halaby, along with Jeff Gerard. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour is about your finances, and we're trying to kind of weed through a little bit. And when you're struggling with having more than one child and wanting to leave more money or money differently or less restrictions to one child, and you have another one who's still just not mature enough. Age doesn't necessarily mean maturity. Heck, being married or having a child doesn't mean maturity. You've seen teenagers have kids.
Right.
You've seen 25-year-old women go out and party all night long, and 30-year-old men still not think that they have responsibility even though they have 2 children at home, right? You've seen that happen. So what makes you think that the money that you have worked for your whole life, saved, gone without, like Jeff was saying, and now you're going to give that to your children without any strings attached? That is very dangerous, because you're counting on the moment you die, their finances to be in order, not to owe any creditors, not to be on the verge of bankruptcy, not to be on the verge of divorce, not to be on the verge of any problems with their life. I think that's a dangerous place to be. By having a trustee involved and having an attorney involved, they can, decide how are they going to send out the money, and you can meet and have those restrictions done. Sitting down and saying, I'm going to have child X receive a certain amount of money at 25, a little bit more at 30, and then at 35 they get a big check. You can do that, right? Give them enough time to get their career on track, but maybe give them a little bit of money along the way. $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month, just enough to make their life a little bit better. Or you can say, tough luck, kid, you're going to get all this money and buy the new car, because Jeff, we deserve it.
Oh,
I deserve a vacation. I need it. I deserve it.
Can't tell you how many times we've heard that. Or, we're having another child, so now we need, this big 18-passenger SUV. Although, the 5 seats in our current car, I thought were enough. But now we've got the stroller, we've got this, we've got that. So now it's an investment in our family.
You know what's amazing to me, Jeff? They'll say things like, I have worked 6 years with only like a couple vacations. 6 years straight. I'm like, 60? No, 6.
6.
What is 6 years working? I guess it's your oldest you've ever been, so you think that's a lot. But when you work 35, 40 years without a vacation, I guess now you deserve something. But other than that, it's called work.
Mom would have wanted us to go to the Four Seasons in Hawaii,
Yeah. Let me back up. Did you actually eat dinner all of those 6 years? Yeah. Did you actually drive a car and you put gas in your... So what do you mean you deserve? You got what you paid for. That's what you did. If you say, I'm going to take a vacation, but I'm not going to spend any money or eat or sleep, okay. But now it's being silly, right? You're getting to the point where you put this artificial deserve or value, and so you start draining that inherited account. If the goal is for you to just throw it to the wind, we've had a lot of atheists that say, or certainly agnostics, but many atheists that say, listen, I don't care, I'm dead. After I'm gone, it is what it is. And I say, well, do you sit around and talk about anybody that's been around? Grandmother, great-grandmother, aunt that has passed away now? Oh, yeah, we talk about them. Well, what do you think they're going to talk about you when you're gone? What words are they going to say? Oh, that son of a gun, or you remember that guy, or good stuff. I don't know. Now, you might, again, go, I don't really care. When I'm dead, I'm dead. Well, then, I guess that's up to you. That's what happens, right? It's your money. You have the right to do that. But be very careful with the lives that you give those dollars to, because you can damage them. You can hurt people. If you wouldn't hurt them while you're alive, why would you hurt them when you pass away? Right? Leave it to a charity. Find a good organization, volunteer, make sure they do the right thing with their money, and then make sure it's on track and all the other good stuff. Fine, leave it to them. If that's your goal. So I want you to be careful. Hey, Jeff, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, in the same vein of what you were saying, you wouldn't hurt them while you're alive. You've also mentioned things like, and I think they're pretty profound. It actually impacted me when I first met you, about a decade ago. when it comes to people having insurance, and you're talking about life insurance earlier, for the folks that want to leave something for their kids or protect themselves now while they have minor kids, that life insurance is very key. And it's a very low cost way of having that wrapper of protection, but it can also be something that you keep. Now, it served you as a buffer. Hey, look, we're building our wealth. If something were to happen to me, I'm the breadwinner. I want my family to still live as the same, or if not better, than they did when I was here if I'm gone. So if they're your family now, they're still your family when you're gone. So it's a big deal, guys. You have to make sure that you do this the right way, because you only get one shot at it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories of someone was just going to the grocery store, they were just going to the dry cleaners, and they didn't come back. And they don't get to hit that reset button. They don't get to go back and actually sign that application and go and take that test so that they could get life insurance. They don't have that opportunity to do that again. So remember, there's a big part of this that goes into the forefront, into the planning. And then some people think, oh, well, you know what? I don't need that life insurance anymore. My kids are grown. It's a very valuable asset because you've already qualified for it. You're never going to be as young and as healthy as you were when you got the life insurance. So think of keeping that as an asset, and now that can become an estate planning tool. And maybe now you can feel like you can spend some of that other money that you were going to earmark for giving your children, because now that life insurance fills that gap, and it does it for a very low cost compared to you giving away some of your retirement accounts. Put it this way, if you have $1 and you're going to give it to your kids from your retirement account, that $1 is probably going to cost them anywhere between 20 and 40 cents for every $1 you give them. Or you can say, I'm going to spend 20 cents of that $1 and give them 80. It's kind of a good, healthy ratio to look at. So
see the difference? And because you're leveraging it, you're buying something on the other side. Why that makes a difference also is because in your world, you can expect to have some money when you die. Because most people are going to have something when they pass away. Because today, there are so many other mechanisms. We're now in the next level of an upswing. We should be in the next. We're going to probably hit a downturn in the next year or so. And then we expect another upswing for maybe 6, 7, 8 years. So we're going to have a year or two of bad days and maybe really bad. I don't know. Some are saying it could be shorter, longer. Focus on this. If you're young enough, if you're still working, chances are you're going to be at a next level. Remember when we used to get pay raises like crazy? 4% a year, 3% a year, 5% a year? That was the way it was. And then in the last 10 years, it's been a stagnant, just a flat. So we have been stuck in that zone, and I think we're going to start seeing some changes now, maybe. If that occurs, then your wealth will increase. If your wealth increases, then you probably won't spend all that money when you're alive, because people are still working. And if you're working beyond retirement, chances are you're not going to be spending your retirement money. Jeff, one of the things that I saw the other day when we spoke to somebody about this is how the value could be taught at such an early age. So if you're in your 30s or 40s or even your 50s and you have children or maybe even grandchildren by that time, and you're sitting down and you're talking about the value of money, don't make money something that it isn't. It is something very simple, in my opinion. It gives you options. That's it. It gives you options.
That's right.
What you do with those options, you either have integrity, your character and value in your life and morals, or you don't. You steal, cheat, lie, right? It doesn't matter. If you're a liar, thief, and a cheat, and you have $5, you can't really impact that many people. But if you have 500,000, that same character is exploited. And you mentioned it earlier, Jeff, when you said money can amplify somebody's character. I would also say power does, right? Make somebody a supervisor at work, or make them a police officer, or give them a job as a manager or director. Yesterday they didn't have that much power or influence, and today they do. You make the right person in that position, and it can help really do good things.
That's right. And, going back to the money side of things, I really like that we have these abilities to be able to control how the money is distributed to our children because of that very reason. If we start to see, and you have to be responsible. You were responsible in accumulating all this money and living a fiscally sound life, right? You got here somehow. You built wealth somehow. Don't short sight yourself and say, look, I'm just going to turn a blind eye and give all my money away. Arif, I love the story you've told about your friend that set some pretty interesting and creative rules in what he has as built into a revocable living trust. So he has some rules attached to where his kids have to do certain things that I think are pretty aggressive, but they're also pretty rewarding when it comes to their inheritance and receiving it after that person passes away.
You know, Jeff, one of the things that we have seen when you're trying to teach your children about this is we have seen families leave videos, leave documentation behind. We had a particular client, and they walked into my office as a referral. They sat down, and the first words out of their mouth is, "We both have terminal cancer."
Oh, wow.
It's like, wow, that's hello, how are you? Guess I found that out. One had been battling it for many, many years, 7 or 8 years, and one had about 10 or 11 years. So they had been struggling with it for quite some time. He passed away first, and then she passed away. Well, before she had passed away, we knew that she was going to leave quite a bit of money to her family. And what we wanted to do was to have a way, because some of the family members were very good with money, some were entrepreneurs and might mess up and take a chance. Maybe they're good or not going to be good. Maybe it's the help they needed. Others were completely, absolutely miserable with it. Like they were going to do some pretty bad things. And then there was some money left for grandchildren, and so you had the same story, some great, some not so great. So what we did is we said, well, why don't we record a video? Why don't you tell me how you and your husband first earned this money? Tell us about that story. Tell us about what you did, why this money is so valuable and important to you today. And they said, well, when we first started our careers, you know, we had a rental, or we rented an apartment, and then we had furniture that was boxes that we got from the back of the place that we worked,
Wow.
you know, in the trash dumpster, and we used them as benches and chairs. And he was getting pretty creative because he could know how to make furniture out of pallets and kind of, dining room tables and scrap furniture. And they struggled and struggled. And then when they started their family, they struggled. And then they bought a house, and it was everything they could do to make sure that they could afford the house. And all of that occurred. And it was a nice little 10 or 15 minute video. And the purpose for that video was simple. It was to allow the kids that were not going to be able to interview or see or talk to their grandmother or mother to realize the effort that she put to make it happen. And so there'd be a bit more of a human assistance view on this money. Right? It isn't as if the money just comes from air. It's not like the lotto. Right? In lotto land, people lose money very quickly because it just happens tomorrow. Like, here it is.
There was no exchange of effort or time. For you to go out and earn money, you normally have to give up your time. Whether you do something like digging a hole or you supervise somebody digging a hole, either way, your time is never coming back. And so the only way you can actually quantify the time that you've put into that, basically the storage of your labor, is in money. That's our medium between someone digging a hole or someone being, a musician or a plumber. It doesn't matter. That money is the medium there. And so when we store that labor, that represents our time and how well you manage that and what you were able to accumulate and store. And now you pass that on to someone incredibly valuable, an enormous amount of value, because that's a piece of you. When people really look at something and they say, okay, that costs X amount, that's a half hour of my time or 3 hours of my time. Do I want this one thing that I'm going to hold now that's going to go down in value, or I'm going to use it and it's going to go away, to equal that piece of my life? So when you have that video, what an incredible lesson. At least it should touch home with somebody taking on these dollars, and they'd think twice about spending it frivolously.
And one of the things that we have seen is if you are going to leave money in an unfair, unequal, maybe that's a better way of putting it, unequal way, or you're going to be justifying, hey, I helped Susie with her house, she keeps moving in with me every 10 minutes and she can't seem to get off her feet and all of that. Or I gave her $5,000 and then I gave her another $10,000. And if you have that kind of a relationship, so you're going to adjust. One child never needed help, one needed a lot. If that's the case, when you're drawing up your trust or your will, make sure you have a doctor. If you have any medical issues, a physician interview you and say, nope, they're of sound mind, this sounds like their wishes, and have that doctor take care of you or your grandparents or whoever, so that their will can be substantiated, that they weren't, losing their mind, they didn't have Alzheimer's, they didn't have, dementia or something that kind of affected why they wouldn't have given you 100% of your portion of the share right now, as opposed to paying it out over time. Consider that as a backup plan. Another one is to do something called a serial will, which is every few months layering out with very, very little changes, layering out your wishes without the major amount changes. Meaning, if I want Jimmy to get 5% and that's it, or nothing, then every single will subsequent along the way is going to be Jimmy gets 5%. Oh, I did it again, right? You're not going to be not of your sound mind for 2 years at a time over the course of 6 different amendments and adjustments to the trust. So by working with your attorney and saying, okay, I need to make sure that this is bulletproof because one of my kids is a jerk and is married to somebody whose dad is a lawyer, so I can expect this to be a drawn-out fight for my other children. I don't want that to be the case where lawyers are the ones that become wealthy.
Right.
So I want to make sure this is as bulletproof as can be. And by having meetings and interviews with the beneficiaries, making sure that you document who's present, right? Making sure your attorney sits down and goes through each of those steps. These are all steps that you can take to keep yourself from being in one place. Everything comes crashing down. Now, Jeff, one of the things that I have seen consistently, and I'm reminded of it every day, because when I drive to and from the office and the freeway, if you will, I pass an area that should have belonged to one of my friends and his brother. Instead, the dad, who was a raging alcoholic, in his late 70s, liver disease, kidney disease, recovered from cancer once or twice and still on it, happened to find and marry a lady in her 30s with her 19-year-old son, and she was the caregiver, and now she moved in.
Imagine that.
Well, now you have somebody who was moved in, married, and suddenly you start to see the will being changed. I don't know, today it's probably worth $20 million, something like that. Yeah, all gone. So if you are expecting to receive money and your parent or grandparent remarries or has another young lady or woman or an older woman or older man in their life, you need to make sure that if there's any changes to the trust that you're a part of that, just to look, if they're of sound mind and they say, listen, you guys are fine, I don't need to give you anything, you're not calling me, you're not visiting, I want it to go to this lady who's my companion or this gentleman who has befriended me. Look, it's their money. Nobody says you have to be smart with your own money. It's your own money.
That's right. There's no rule attached.
Yeah, you just don't want to be, threatened or undue influence or scared when you're making these decisions. So be aware that can happen. We have seen it time and again.
Well, that's one of the textbook examples that we see of something changing so drastically is someone new outside of the family is introduced, and it's normally a romantic or intimate relationship, especially if they want to get married. That's some pretty binding power right there too. So all of these things are really just designed for you to start to look at the situation. If you're someone that's a beneficiary or soon to be a beneficiary, maybe in 10 or 20 years, some of those things are very important. And I like what you were talking about, that serial will, because what it does is it leaves footprints in the sand all along the way. Someone could say, oh, look, I didn't want this, nephew to get any money at all. Well, you could say, well, that will is 10 years old. We patched it up right before the end, and no, he still didn't like you. But now you can contest that. So it's crazy how many times you write something down or how many documents you have. Someone can always hire a great attorney to interpret the law. So, and especially if it's, written a certain way. So be careful with that.
And sometimes having that conversation with folks along the way is very important, but you need to have the consideration of a clause that you put inside of your revocable trust. And when your attorney sits down with you, you say, listen, if this one kid that I'm going to leave a very small amount to, if that child starts to fight me back or fight back the estate and takes everybody to court. I want to say that if he loses, he gets nothing.
Wow.
So, for example, you can say, I want Susie to get $100,000 and Jimmy to get $500. And Susie goes, that's not fair. I want my portion. Well, if Susie contests it and loses, she doesn't even get the $100,000. She gets nothing. So she has to weigh whether or not she's going to swing for the fence and get an all or nothing deal here. And so you have to put that in your trust if you want that to be the case. We'll come back and we're going to cover a little bit more as we wrap up this hour of the program. I'm Arif Halaby. This is Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. What if you want to favor one child in your will or your trust versus another, or more than one? Can you do it, and is it the right thing to do? We'll wrap that up when we come back. Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Hey, welcome back to the show. Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Okay, your family's finances. You might say, listen, we've worked our entire life, we've saved up some money, our goal is to put together a few nickels to rub together, and my goodness, we were successful. Whether it might be a real estate fortune, maybe it was the retirement savings accounts you happen to have invested in, a business that did very well, and you're going to most likely leave money to your children or your grandchildren. I want to encourage you to have a revocable living trust. Have a good attorney, assist you with it. Generally speaking, there's no reason to pay more than $4,000 or $5,000. If you had a bunch of properties out of state or a bunch of businesses and corporate stuff, maybe you'll pay, a little bit more, but probably between $2,000, $1,500, $1,800, $2,000, and as much as $4,000 or $5,000 at the most. Why do I say that? Because just 10 years ago, a client sat down with me, husband, wife, nothing special, little kids, no fancy business or real estate. They both had jobs. No, in fact, she was a stay-at-home mom now, and he had a job as a corporate executive. And their attorney sent them $8,000 bill for their trust.
Incredible.
And I thought, you got to be kidding. Just because they had a lot of money, he thought he solved backwards, right? He said, oh, okay, how much of that can I take? Instead of, what kind of work am I doing? So I want you to be very careful. If there are guys like that were doing this 10 years ago, they got to still be doing it today. So make sure you don't do it yourself, and you don't get one of those folks that are charging you for a basic, a trust, these massive dollars. There's some really good attorneys in town. 3 or 4 or 5 good ones that I can recommend. There's a few that I would avoid, some that I would avoid like the plague. But that has to be your review, your conversations. Check with your friends. Check with those that you've spoken with as far as referrals. Ask around, hey, did you have a good attorney? Hey, did you have somebody you've used? And they'll give you some good advice along the way, right? You don't want these folks that whose goal it is, really, at the end, is just to be able to hold the original, because that makes the children come back to them. There's no reason for them to hold the original. The original should be in your safe or your safe deposit box, not with the attorney. They can have a copy. The kids can choose to use him or her if you want, but they don't have to. Be very careful with that. I've seen that cause all sorts of rifts in the family.
And maybe even make sure you get some references that are actual clients. If you have a prospect estate planning attorney, ask them, hey, do you have 1 or 2, maybe 3 clients that I could talk with, maybe in different scenarios, or even some that are similar to me, and then I can take a look and see what their experience has been. That's always a good testament to seeing what type of work that person can perform. Talk to someone that actually has become a client. So that's one of the ways to do that. And then you can kind of get a gauge of what the experience might be for yourself. And, and you're talking about being overcharged for a trust, and you touched on it. The opposite is true. Underdoing it versus overdoing it. These DIY solutions that are out there online, do it yourself. Everybody's out there trying to do things to save a buck. Well, look, let's put it this way. Whatever might be on the web might be valuable to somebody, but it's certainly, in my opinion, not valuable to everybody. Check with someone that's a professional that can tailor a plan. Look, you might be a plain vanilla, just a very simple living trust, and it won't cost you very much, but at least you'd know it's done right. And if you have questions, you can go back. If things change, whether it's the law or how things would be interpreted into your estate, you can at least go back to a professional and not have to do the guesswork yourself.
And think of it like this. Look, if you have one beneficiary and you have you have your home, you have a checking savings account, you have some retirement accounts, and maybe a small life insurance policy to help bury you and all that. If you're that simple, and you don't have anybody that's going to contest it, not a stepchild or her kids' marriages, and the spouse is not a jerk and of your child and all that, then maybe it's something you can do very quick and easy online. I don't know. But what I do know is that over time, when you have professionals doing professional work and experts doing expert work, you usually end up getting what you paid for. You don't end up, oh, it's $300. Well, that's great. How come Michael Jackson and others didn't have certain documents in place where we now know their entire portfolio, right? Look, when Frank Sinatra passed away, do you realize in Frank Sinatra, to this day, nobody knows what his assets were? Because he had a trust, and he had layers of secrecy and protection, because that's what it can afford you as well, is to give you the ability to protect your children or grandchildren from being harassed or bothered or hit up in the media, depending on the level of wealth and success. And then there are others like Prince that passed away, and when he passed away, he didn't have anything like that. So now you have everybody fighting for it. You have the attorneys who are going to make millions by the time it's all done, because everybody in that circle needs an attorney. The estate has to have one. Each beneficiary has to have one. And that means everybody, when they talk, when all 6 of them get together, it's 6 times $500 an hour. That means you're spending $3,000 an hour to have your attorneys say, okay, we'll do it again next week.
Yeah, they're not out making friends. This is billable time on the phone.
Yeah. And I love it when people will call me and they'll go, I talked to my accountant or my attorney, and it was really quick on the phone, but he talks really slow, or he took a long time, and then, the next month I got a bill in the mail for $125.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, for what? They said, I don't know. I didn't. Okay. So understand that that's what they have to sell as their time, and what you have to do is protect your money. And sometimes those things can be in conflict, so you got to be careful with that. Look, Jeff, as we finish up this hour of the program, I guess just give me a 1-sentence or 2-sentence snippet of something that you want people to remember when we're talking about whether they should favor one child or another, if it's okay.
Well, I think a big part is to remember what you may have done for your kids over their lifetime. If you've helped them while you're alive, don't feel obligated to split everything down the middle or in thirds or equally in the end. Whatever your wishes are, these are your wishes for your children, and however you think you can enhance their lives with your gift of an inheritance, I think that's where you should really draw your heart and make a plan around that. And
be careful, because part of what you're doing is adding gasoline to a fire when you give a child who is not good with a little bit of money, but they can't get into a lot of trouble, right? They don't have good credit, so they're not getting lots of credit cards in the mail. They're not buying fancy cars or houses, so they can lose everything very quickly. But now you're going to give them the gasoline. And that little fire that was burning is now going to grow into an enormous fire. So if you are going to want to have your children remember you with a favor, remember you in a well balanced environment, and not be mad at you for doing things the way you left the money, then make sure you do it the right way per child. You do not have to do the same for all kids. That is a made-up thing in your mind. If one is better with money, if one is not, then you can leave it in different formats. You can leave them the same amount, but in different ways. Thanks for listening. We're going to be here every week at this time on Tuesday from 1 to 2, or 12 to 1. 12 to 1 on your place for news, talk, and information. This is Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif, Halaby. That's Jeff Gerard on AM 1220 KHTS.